set aside aesthetics, set aside furniture, set aside paint color, all those surface things, and start asking yourself the question, what does my space need so that it can support me? Because quite literally, if you're in an environment that doesn't encourage you to be your highest and truest self, then what's the point of the environment? At that point, what it's doing is just hindering you from growth.
Welcome to this episode of Bits by Bacon. I am your host, Misty Bacon Renner, and joining me today is a special guest, Vera Blouin, the founder and design strategist behind BLU Inc., a residential design studio specializing in spatial strategy, spatial psychology, and identity-driven living across Dallas, Miami, and Atlanta. She has over 15 years of experience in interior design and construction, and she is the author of The Reincarnated Room and The Structure of Space. Joining me today, Vera, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Misty, for having me. I'm really excited about being here.
So tell us a little bit about your background. You have overseas experience, and how did that inspire your shift to spatial psychology, and what does that in transition look like from interior design?
Yeah, so the shift didn't happen overnight. It's something that, simply because I lived internationally, it happened gradually over years of observing home, regardless of country and culture, and noticing some underlying patterns. So when I began truly understanding how space impacted daily life, I realized homes were functioning against how people were living inside them, not just through poor material selections or our growing separation, because we put this divide, growing separation and disconnect from nature, but psychologically and emotionally as well. Our homes are supposed to be places of restoration, but for many of us, it quietly becomes kind of a little bit of a prison and a container that holds our past lives, where we reinforce old routines, old patterns of stress, or old identities and ways of living that no longer match who we're becoming. So what fascinated me most was that conversations around design focus on the house itself, furniture, just the finishes, aesthetics. Even I was part of those conversations for many years, like, skipping from directly from what do you want into let's select finishes, but rarely the conversation regarding the human, the person, the people experience. Rarely was that a conversation in space and how space influenced us. So that's what led me toward really focusing these last few years on spatial psychology, and eventually became the foundation of what I want BLU INK to be going forward.
And do you work mostly with like someone that's building, or it could be like my house, we've been here 5 years, and redesigning and restructuring kind of my current house? So a little bit of both, or do you work one more than the other?
Both, but however, ideally, most of the time it is with, not ideally because I work with both, but most of the time it's with pre-existing buildings, because that's where the greatest need is. Because most of our existing structures were designed by, a builder and an architect got together and said, hey, we want to do a bunch of houses, right? So it was never designed around people and how people actually function. Or existing spaces where someone bought it, maybe it was a custom house for someone else, but then the next homeowner that came behind, they bought it and it's a nice house and they love it. But then when they get in it, they realize, oh, this is not functional and is creating friction for me in daily life. So both, but primarily those pre-existing structures.
Got it. And primarily, so your clientele is Atlanta, Dallas, and Miami. How did you become into those areas? Have you lived in all of those areas, or you would go visit family and you started picking up clients?
No, so it actually was just a strategic business decision. I travel all of the time. I'm obsessed with traveling. I've been all over this country and many others. And so when I started saying, hey, I want to start really honing in on human-centered design, I started focusing on pockets where there was more of a modern design, there was more of an aesthetic for people that wanted to connect with the outdoor, indoor living, and where there was more of an influx of people, younger people, millennials, things like that, that are moving into areas that needed that kind of more focused, defined living, as opposed to being in spaces where people are just only open to staying in that traditional mindset of design. So, for example, in Miami, I have clients who that outdoor indoor living and that connection in nature is really important, and that comes from, again, because living and having that international experience. Miami is a very international city, so that connection indoor outdoor living comes from that integration with their international lifestyle. So whether they're from Spain or from France or wherever they're from, they're bringing that, and it's isolated in this one small bubble. So they're bringing their lifestyle, and it kind of turns Miami into something else. With Dallas, you have people from New York, you have people from California, you have people from all over the country coming in just influx there, primarily due to industry, right? But they're bringing their lifestyle, because I know Texas has a beautiful lifestyle, which is awesome. But then you have these other cultures, and when I mean cultures, because California has its own culture, New York City people have their own culture, and so you have this merging of cultures that are bringing their idea of living into spaces. And I know primarily before, when you thought Texas has this wonderful reputation, big Texas, doing it big, and now it's more that it's not necessarily just doing it big. You're doing it also a little bit modern. You're also bringing that outdoor indoor living, because again, that's merging of cultures. And then Atlanta, especially because my family's in Atlanta. With Atlanta is such a growing market. It's still kind of trapped in the traditional aspect, but because there's a migration to Atlanta as well, a lot of the design people are starting to warm up to the less conservative styles, like more traditional styles, transitional styles of design, and they are merging into the modern feel. And when I mean modern, I'm not simply just saying clean lines. I mean a modern mindset of how to think about living. So it was, very business decision.
So you've said inside outside living several times. So, and this is what I'm envisioning. My brother and sister-in-law had a house in Pensacola, and they had a little slab in their back door. They walk out the back door, there's a little slab. Well, they made the slab bigger and they enclosed it, but not, so it was it was truly outside so that they could see the kids when they were on the trampoline or playing or whatever. But then they knocked down the walls so that it was even bigger, and it made that from the living room to the backyard almost like just it was just more of a flow. Is that kind of what your concept when you say inside outside living?
Yes, but not exactly. So when I mean inside outdoor living, yes, I definitely mean that. But when I mean indoor outdoor living, I mean in the aspect of when you think of a building and the traditional sense of building, we have created these walls that divide us, completely separate us, and not even just walls, even the materials, the selections we create, but we've created homes that separate us from anything exterior, any outside stuff, anything that's natural that would naturally help us balance and align. So more when I say indoor outdoor living, yes, I'm meaning that structural aspect as far as the building and connecting directly with nature, but I also mean that in the way we function and flow and mentally view space, we've put a divider up. So when you have people who, for example, I'm going to use Spain, for example, because of siestas and all that stuff. So you have, say, someone from Spain that comes, and when they view home, they view it as, okay, yeah, this is home, but how am I reconnecting back with nature? Because for them, it's that connection is such a strong part in how they do their own architecture, right? And their design. And then when they're walking through their spaces and flow and function, the mindset is completely different. So when, in a sense, so with indoor outdoor, if we change how we view our mindset and the flow of space, it can minimize some of that friction. So yes, essentially indoor outdoor physical, but also the mental aspect of it and defining what that means.
And do you think that is, my grandparents, they had open porches. They visited with their neighbors. They'd wave at people walking. And then my neighborhood, we don't have porches. Like, I'm not sitting on my front porch or in the front yard visiting with neighbors at all. Now, we do have a back patio, and I do, like, if I'm out in the backyard, I have plants. I have a little chair I like to lay out in the sun. So that when I hear my neighbor out, we'll yell at each other through the fence, kind of like Wilson did on that show.
Home Improvement. Yeah.
And I love, like, I have plants everywhere, inside, outside, herbs, flowers, all kinds of things. But I see neighbors that literally either they get out of their car and run inside, or they open the garage, park in the garage, and then I never see them. I have 2 neighbors I've never even seen ever.
Yeah.
And I've lived here 5 years. I have no idea what they look like.
Yeah.
So could that be a generational thing? And now it kind of is by design. Like, I'm not connecting to my neighbors. So intentionally, like, if I want to intentionally, I have to invite them to my house, and either we're grilling or whatever, but I have to be more intentional, where I feel like before, with the open porches and, lots of windows for lighting, like, it just traditionally has changed. Do you think that I'm sure it wasn't a builder was just like, hey, we're going to make better use of our space. Like, it was kind of just a natural, hey, people aren't on their patios anymore. Maybe we give them more space inside because people aren't, like, does that make sense? Like, was there a one defining moment that made this change, or it was just a natural shift?
For me, in my opinion, I believe that maybe a natural shift as far as how society has functioned, because over time, back in the day, even, I use Andy Griffith because that's my parents, watch it. You have the little kids riding the bicycle, going the place, and you're in your town and everybody knows each other, right? Sure. But then when people started naturally moving away from home, right? Moving away from home, doing their own lives, raising their own families, states over, somehow that connection divide started getting greater and greater. And over time, as far as society goes, it was, okay, I don't know you, I'm just going to go in my house. And then there's that, again, that big wall. And then with social media increasing, there is also that greater lack of requirement to, hey, let's get to know people. Because home is, I will say, home is a sanctuary. I love a private space. I love a space that I can walk into, close my door, and shut the world out. But we're doing that in every aspect of our life. And so now building is doing that as well, where we're creating these blocks mentally and physically in our lives that don't allow for flow. So I think socially,
So for listeners, what would be one best piece of advice for them if they're ready to make a move, or what is one thing, like something simple that they can do to change their space that they're currently in? So just someone that already has an existing property that they own, because obviously you're not going to move walls and things if you're renting or you're in an apartment. But what is one thing that they could do today to change where they're living right now?
So instead of set aside aesthetics, set aside furniture, set aside paint color, all those surface things, and start asking yourself the question, what does my space need so that it can support me? Because quite literally, if you're in an environment that doesn't encourage you to be your highest and truest self, then what's the point of the environment? At that point, what it's doing is just hindering you from growth. So a lot of people are living in environments that are designed for survival, for convenience, and then again, that earlier chapter, previous versions of their life, not who they're actually becoming. And so you just need to pay attention to rooms you avoid, pay attention to where you feel peace and calm in your space, and then pay attention to what is mentally heavy, right? And sometimes it's just a matter of sitting down, not really meditating, but just sitting down, turning everything off, and really just kind of being present and saying, okay, how do I feel in this space right now? And if there's friction, maybe you're like, I have anxiety in this space, or I feel a little overwhelmed, then you need to ask, okay, why am I feeling overwhelmed? Is it because maybe I have a lot of stuff in my space, or is it because the things that I have in my space, there's an heavy emotional attachment to it that's making it uneasy for me to be in this space. And if that's the case, start removing, just getting rid of and being okay with getting rid of. And then at that point, you essentially start building up that relationship with your space. And when I say relationship, space is quite literally, you can have a relationship with a husband, you can have a relationship with a boyfriend, girlfriend, you can have a relationship with your children, but your space is quite literally the most intimate relationship you're ever going to have with, and I don't say anything because it's a unknown, but it's a subconscious relationship. And that relationship is literally subconsciously either enforcing good for your life, or it's enforcing negative. So if you're not taking care of, if you're neglecting your space, if you're not listening to the needs that it's saying that you need for it, it just like any relationship, it can dissolve, or it can just be something pure, beautiful, additive. So yeah, take care of space, ask questions, take the moment of just being still in it and resolving any friction. And those spaces that you find peace in, try to create that in the rest of your home.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about your books.
Yes.
Your first book, The Reincarnated Room?
Yes.
Okay, and give us a little snippet of that would, so people will go out and get a better understanding of what you do, as well as, I'm assuming after reading the book, it could help them do exactly what you just said, where I'm purging a room, or I'm okay with, I'm good with this space, and how do I create that in a different room?
Yeah, so the Reincarnated Room I was working on this project with a client, right? And I had this thought because I didn't realize, and it's wonderful how life works for you. I did not realize going to that project how much I was going to be transformed. She was transformed, but I was definitely transformed. And it's wonderful, that little symbiosis situation.
Yes.
So the Reincarnated Room came about because of a client, and I was thinking about a spiritual aspect of life, because I know we all have faith in things. So I was like, you know what? Going into people's homes and helping them, ushering them, being like a shepherd into their next highest, truest self is like helping someone die, like helping someone get rid of a past version of themselves and moving into that next. And I was like, what's the definition of that? I was like, oh, reincarnation. And I always think of it as the butterfly. So the butterfly goes through that process of coming a caterpillar, going into this chrysalis form, completely dissolving. And then at the end of it, there's a butterfly. That's how I envision home when I step into it with clients. So the Reincarnated Room is really essentially helping people put an identity to space and saying, okay, this is who I'm becoming. And is my space a reflection of that? And if it isn't, where do I need to start? It doesn't give you all. It's not a how-to step by step, but it's just a beginning framework so you can start understanding and identifying those beginning friction points in your home, and then start the process of kind of shedding, as you mentioned. So reincarnating, becoming the butterfly.
Got it. And then the Structure of Space, your second book, is that a continuation or kind of a complete different direction?
No, it's a continuation. So with the Reincarnated Room, it's the identity of space, and then the structure of space, because I always talk about the foundation. So the structure of space is essentially looking at your space the same way you would look at building a home. Every home has a foundation, whether it's on, slab or raised or whatever. Every home has a foundation, and if the foundation is not designed to support the home and all the furniture in and everything, what happens over time is the foundation that starts to slide or settle into the soil because you didn't take into account the soil, and then the home starts falling down, right? So the structure of space is, now that we've identified and put an identity to space and how you need it to usher you in the next chapter, now let's look at the foundation of your space, the structure. Is your home flowing properly? What are those rooms doing? How are they communicating with each other? Because in home, it's not just one individual room that you need to take into account. You can go room by room, but you need to see how your entire home is flowing and how to fix that, which is that's the foundation of space. So yes.
Got it. Perfect. Well, we will put those up so people could check those out. My two final questions that I ask every guest. The first one is, what words of advice or wisdom would you give your 22-year-old self?
Whew, that's a tough question. So, what words of advice would I give my 22-year-old self? Oh, because I've had so many experiences, I would probably say keep going. Everything that you're doing now is worth it. It may be doesn't seem like it, but everything you're doing is worth it. So keep going. Trust in
Yes,
yourself.
that's great.
And another one would be, which I always did, but I learned this later on, is don't make a decision based on fear. Any decision that you make based on fear is just going to hold you back and limit you. Step into that fear and allow yourself the opportunity to see what it looks like on the other side, because everything you want is on the other side of that.
Oh, for sure. And there are no wrong decisions. There's just, you just pivot. You just,
Right.
what's the next step? Because I have some people in transition in their life for different reasons, whether it's graduating, divorce, whatever. And it's like, well, now what? And I was like, it's a blank canvas. Like, this is the first day of the rest, of the new you, the new history, the new path. So just pivot and take the next step.
Exactly.
And my last question is, what would you want to be remembered for?
For helping people be their highest and truest self in the form of space and home.
That's wonderful. I appreciate you joining me today. This has been enlightening. I love it, and helpful for those that maybe they're stuck, or maybe they don't know why they're stuck. This is kind of a reflection for them and for myself. Like, there is one room that I don't really go into very much, so I'm going to
Ask yourself some
investigate
questions.
Yes, yes. Well, I appreciate you, and we will get your contact information up there so people can contact you. And I just thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Misty, for having me. It's been a pleasure. You have a great day.
And remember, everybody loves bacon. Thanks for hanging out with me on Bits by Bacon. Be sure to follow, leave a review, and send this to that friend who always wants the inside scoop in and around the Houston area. I'll see you next time with more stories, real estate talk, and a little bit of everything in between. And remember, everybody loves bacon.